So, as I've stated on this channel before and explored through one or two videos, I identify as a libertarian, and I hold libertarianism to mean that people, consenting adults, do as they please, save keeping one another from taking any action that's the same. You know, I take it to mean that people do as they please, save keeping another from doing the same. So take any action you like, so as long as said action does not impair another from doing the same, if they wish. Now, answering the question, how does this relate to anarchy? I feel like the two are intrinsically linked. Now, let's see. When it comes to looking at political spectrums... Oops, why did that zoom in? Okay. When it comes to looking at political spectrums, there's only one that matters. We have so many models, but they are all so insufficient. Also, like, none of them really capture what politics, what freedom boils down to. Oh, for God's sake, what did I just click? Shut up. Give me 2 seconds. I need to bring the stream up on my phone. Alright, all good. So, like, stuff like this, so inefficient. Like, this isn't enough. This doesn't encapsulate everything. Still, it's not enough. Now, these are all inefficient ways at representing the spectrum that exists when negotiating politics. This one especially, my God. Anyone who thinks that this is in any way legitimate is completely politically inept. The only spectrum that matters in politics... Why is it a box? Get rid. There's only one spectrum that matters in politics. And that is how liberated your society is, and how dominated it is. Now, authority here, obviously, we use the word authority differently. Let's see. I'm not using authority to refer to it like the police or anything. But authority... in terms of unjust, authoritarianism. So, this is the only spectrum that matters in a society. How free that society is, or how dominated that society is. Now, there's various means that we can ascribe to either end of the spectrum to better represent it. For instance, a society that values freedom and liberty is going to be democratic. So we can shove that on one end. Oops. And then on the other end of the spectrum, a society that values autocracy is going to lean towards a dictatorship. Dictatorial. Oh shit. I had to think for a moment. So, these aren't necessarily models. These ones here. These aren't necessarily models for society, though. You can have a democracy filled with unjust hierarchy. You could have a benevolent dictatorship. I know that some people talk about there's no such thing as a benevolent dictatorship, and I would have to disagree. It would be an unjust hierarchy. It wouldn't be liberated. But yes, it's certainly possible for there to be a benevolent dictatorship. And remember, we're trying to find a balance between liberty and authority. What system represents liberation? What system represents authoritarianism? I might change... Wait, which one? This one. I might change the name for that. No, I can't. Okay, whatever. So, what system best represents liberty? Well, if we're looking at libertarianism, as you being free to do as you wish, safekeeping anyone from doing the same, then we have to find a system that advocates for the abolition of unjust hierarchies. Because as a libertarian, you must oppose unjust hierarchies. The existence of an unjust hierarchy is an impediment on a person's freedom, whether that be their freedom of speech, their freedom of movement, freedom of association. Now, there is certain restrictions on a person's liberty that we accept within the purview of our laws. For instance, like the example I gave in my libertarianism video is, if you come across a crime scene, you're not allowed to just walk through it. That is an impairment on your freedom of movement, but that's one that we accept in our society. That would be an example of a just hierarchy. I mean, because we would socially accept that we would not want to contaminate a crime scene. That makes sense. That's an impairment on a person's freedom of movement. That's logical. So, if we want to work towards the abolition of unjust hierarchy, well then, for me, there's a system in mind that does just that. Actually, you know what? Let's be a bit more fun. So, what system best represents the abolition of unjust hierarchy? Well, excuse the crappy drawing. That would be Anarchy. In the UK, the USA, and hopefully the AUS. Now, Anarchy gets a bum rap. Everyone misconstrues it to mean lawlessness, which is just not true. There's certain characteristics of Anarchy, and it can be a bit hard to define. However, we don't need to get wrapped up in any kind of theory or anything. Anarchy, very simply, can be defined as the abolition of unjust hierarchies, or at least that's how I would define it. A system that seeks to completely abolish the existence of an unjust hierarchy, in whatever form that comes. Now, there's characteristics of anarchy that we can point to, like the abolition of the state, the abolition of borders, sure. These are examples of unjust hierarchies. So, in a system where we want to truly live up to the libertarian ideals, I feel like anarchy suits that goal. Because if anarchy, how I defined it, is the abolition of unjust hierarchies. Now, in opposite to this, we need a system that enshrines hierarchy. A system, I'm going to have to get a bit thinner than that. where unjust hierarchy is not only accepted, oops, I need black. Where unjust hierarchy is not only accepted, but enshrined. That's still too thick. Alright. So, to represent unjust hierarchy, I'm going to draw... Oh my goodness. Wait, hang on. As you can tell, graphic design is my passion. No. Okay. Here is the symbol for fascism appropriated by the Italian Fascist Party. The fasces, represented by a hatchet bound to a faggot, a bundle of sticks. That's the actual use of the word, alright? That's what you call a bundle of sticks wrapped together. So, on one end of the spectrum, we have anarchy, the abolition of unjust hierarchy. At the other end of the spectrum, we have fascism, the enshrinement of unjust hierarchy. In a fascist system, it does not matter what form that hierarchy comes in. If an unjust hierarchy exists, where one or more group of people have a different standard of rights than one or more groups of people, this is an example of an unjust hierarchy, and depending on how much it leans on our various identities for the spectrum, it leans close towards fascism. Now, this is being quite reductive. For instance, Australia is a country and has a border, which I would consider the existence of such to be unjust hierarchies, but that doesn't mean that Australia is a fascist system. I'm simply presenting what I see as the only spectrum that matters in terms of living up to the ideals of libertarianism and having a free society. The more your society protects and enshrines unjust hierarchies, the closer towards fascism it is. Now, I haven't mentioned left or right-wing politics. However, like I said in my libertarianism video, it's funny that when we look at issues that are divided on a partisan line, which side, which either side of the spectrum comes down on. And wouldn't you know it, we already have everything lined up on the appropriate side. People, as an attempt to smear the left or left-wing ideologies, people will often point out that, well, people often say that, oh, the Nazis were socialists, they had socialists in their name. Well, by that same logic, then North Korea really must be a bastion of liberal democracy. There's nothing left-wing about the Nazis. In no way did the Nazis approach a system of anarchy. Nazi Germany was all about the enforcement and protection of unjust hierarchies. A huge emphasis on authority, centralized government, centralized economy. Obviously, civil rights abused for different classes of society, different minorities. and the rights of other demographics of society protected. In what way does this approach anarchy? Or not even anarchy? Does it approach communism or socialism? A clue. None. A society that works towards the abolition of unjust hierarchy would be one in which, in whatever form it comes, taking steps to remove that hierarchy, to make it more fair, more liberated, more democratic. Now, there's some hierarchies that must exist, which would be argued that are just, like the one of the police scene, but also, for instance, the hierarchy that exists between a child and an adult. When it comes to people acting as they please, that needs to remain as consenting adults. And there is steps that we can take to make our society more just and more liberated. For example, currently, the way that we conduct our businesses is very authoritarian. People don't have a say in their workplace. It's not democratic. For some reason, we like democracy in our government, but not our business. This is an example of an unjust hierarchy. Why should one person lord over the business? Any argument that one could make for protecting or could make against a democratic workplace could also be made in favor of monarchy. If you think that monarchy is an unjust system, which, I mean, that's like authoritarian dictatorship, the rights of a minority protected are greater than the rights of others, in this case the royal family. Yeah, absolutely. How is that not an unjust hierarchy? So, let's take the model of our government and apply it to our business. But let's not stop there. Governments, our government, while it might not be an unjust hierarchy, it certainly isn't just. The way that representative democracy is run is so inefficient, and it borderlines on unjust. We vote every 3-4 years or more, depending on the country, 5, 6. We vote for our representatives, and then we just hope that they do what we want. They make promises beforehand, and then we just hope that they keep them. What? If a elected representative, wins the election, goes through, they can just go, once they're in, just completely renege on all their promises, sees saying what they're arguing for, what they want for their area. They can do what they want. And, they might be voted out next election, but until then, it doesn't matter. And we routinely see constituencies are quick to forget that their promises haven't been lived up to. So, I'm not advocating for the abolition of representative democracy. I think that representative democracy is a good system, because due to our population size and our various demographics, I feel like representative democracy is a good thing. But let's make it fairer. Let's make it more just. Let's get closer towards the abolition of unjust hierarchies. How can we do that? Well, I think we need to combine direct democracy with representative democracy. Direct democracy throws back to ancient Greece, where everyone voted on decisions. Now, again, given our population size and how diverse it is, it's not exactly feasible. But we can combine it with representative democracies. So, it would take a lot of investment. So sorry, conservatives, it's going to require some money. Let's invest in, for every country, a national standard of internet. Give everyone a device. Create an app so that, when X parliament or presidential decision comes up, your representative is going to, in 2 weeks' time, vote on X policy. Do you want them to vote yay, nay, more information? There we go. That's an example of making a system in our society more fair, more just. And I feel like that works out so that even if we were to abolish the idea of a state, a system of representation with that kind of incorporation of direct democracy not only allows the society to remain just, but also to remain stable. Now, I mentioned it before, but I'm going to go back to it now. I want to talk about I want to talk about how the left comes down on the side of liberty and the right comes down on authority. Oh, sorry, went down the wrong way. There's a lot of memes that get thrown around. Antifa's the real fascists. Conservatives are the real progressives. It's crap. If we look at every social issue, which side does the left come down on? Does the left come down on the side of liberty, the abolition of unjust hierarchy, or does it come down on the side of authority, the enshrinement of unjust hierarchy? Is it either working towards an anarchist system or a fascist system? Let's take a social issue that's directly related to people's right to bodily autonomy, and that's abortion. Now, which side does the left argue for? Well, the left argues that the parent has the authority over their body, and as such, it is their decision alone whether or not to carry a child to full term or to terminate the pregnancy. Now, some people on the right, if they're not making a religious argument, could argue that the rights of the child supersede the rights of the parent. Now, there's different arguments in terms of personhood of the child. Is it a person? Is it not? Those really aren't important. What's the bigger question is, do the rights of the parent supersede the rights of the child? And this is where it gets a bit trickier, but I would say yes. The parent is an established adult. The potential child is not. Now, what else? What about trans rights? Who's arguing for trans rights? Do trans rights deserve the same rights as everyone else? Well, the left says yes. The right says no. We just saw Donald Trump on his way out sign in a bunch of anti-LGBT laws. So we don't want to give LGBT people the same rights as everyone else. Well, that's an unjust hierarchy, isn't it? It absolutely is. You have, a standard where some people enjoy some rights and some people don't. That is an unjust hierarchy. There's an example of a society moving further towards fascism, in which the rights of some are enshrined above the rights of others. So, to cap it off, how does anarchism relate to libertarianism? It is directly related. I am first and foremost a libertarian. I am an anarchist because I am a libertarian. I believe that people have the freedom to move freely, to speak, associate, and move however they choose, as long as that action does not impede others to do the same. For me, anarchism is a system that lives up to that ideal. A system that works towards the abolition of unjust hierarchies, which a libertarian must oppose, because the existence of an unjust hierarchy implies that there are some rights that one group enjoys that one or more groups enjoy that one or more do not. And an anarchist would oppose them because they want to work towards the abolition of unjust hierarchy, and a libertarian must oppose that to live up to the ideas of libertarianism. On the other end, the more a society protects the rights of some greater than the others, the closer it gets towards fascism. The closer it gets towards authoritarianism, dictatorship, and every other system that puts one group of people over another. Which is also, really quickly, a very easy way to define fascism. There's a lot of talk about how fascism is hard to define, and it is, purposefully so. You know, people can talk about Umberto Eco's 14 points of fascism, and they are worth reading. You can just find them online. They're worth familiarizing yourself with. But this is the same thing of like what I said about anarchism. We're just talking about characteristics. You know, like if we look at characteristics of fascism, it's always like alluding to a lost glory in the past. Ultra nationalistic. There always must be an enemy of the society who's simultaneously weak while also scary and strong. Sure, these are just characteristics of fascism. If you want to define fascism in a sentence, a society that involves the enforcement and protection of unjust hierarchies. Done. Easy peasy. And an easy example, look at Nazi Germany. There was clear hierarchies in that society. Very easy to define. On top, you've got Aryans. On the bottom, all the people that the Nazis didn't like. Jews, gypsies, the mentally ill, LGBT people, and so on. Easy peasy. Fascism can be defined as a society that enforces and protects unjust hierarchies. So, this is how anarchism relates to libertarianism. Now, for this piece, I did not prepare any theory. I didn't read do any reading of theory because that's just boring. I went literally just everything that's up here. Went off literally everything that's up here. And you can too. Let's not get bogged down in theorists that have been dead for 100 years. It's very simple. If you want a society that's free, just, and liberated, then you would work towards one that seeks the abolition of unjust hierarchies, an anarchist system. If you wanted one that protects hierarchy, depending on the degree you want that hierarchy, you would work towards fascism. So, while you might not be an anarchist, you'd have to ask yourself, how far am I willing to go? At what point am I willing to protect unjust hierarchies? And hey, if you want to argue what those unjust hierarchies are, my DMs are open anytime. I'm happy to have you on. We'll duke it out as to what's just and what's unjust.